What's going on, everybody? Culturedog Sam Hatch back with another YouTube video. And thanks for everyone for joining my channel, subscribing, and dropping all the cool comments. I've been meeting Laserdisc fans from around the world, and it's awesome. Wicked cool to be just surrounded by people interested in a cool format. And it's been an equal mix of people that have been loving the format since the 80s and 90s, and also people that are just discovering it now and finding it just very cool. And awesome to be acquainted with you. So I'm going to do another Laserdisc Spotlight video and then get onto my collection. This one is also a bit of an update because it fits into my Criterion Collection, and it's been something I have been looking for a long time. And just recently doing my Criterion Collection video, I realized that I should just pull the trigger and pick up a copy. And I've been a fan forever. I still recall seeing this in 1984 and freaking out. I was, I don't think I was 12 years old yet. I think I was just 11 on the cusp of becoming 12, and just remember talking about it nonstop at school. I have the pin. I am a Ghostbuster. This proves it. I would wear this all the time, and of course I would rock this like a madman, the original soundtrack album. I didn't care if Ghostbusters was a ripoff of I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis Jr. and Huey Lewis in the News, Ray Parker Jr. doing Ghostbusters. I used to kill that song over and over again. I still remember, I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but whenever MTV would play the video, I would run screaming from whatever room I was in, like a little girl seeing the Beatles. I would run into the room and watch the video every time. And I still remember being over at friends' houses, and I was in another room looking through something or using the bathroom, and it came on, and they're like, "Oh, Sam's gonna run in," and sure enough, I'm like, "Yeah, Ghostbusters!" Ah! I don't know why it never got old. I can watch it over and over again. There's actually some really cheesy stuff on the soundtrack, but anyways, I finally picked up the CAV edition of Ghostbusters, and you can tell you've got the CAV. Thankfully, Criterion was really horrible with multiple releases. They'd have a CLV version with no extras, maybe a trailer if you were lucky, and then a CAV version loaded with extras. And film fans are going to want to get the CAV version. I know that it was nice of them to release a CLV version for those of us that didn't have $99 to drop on a release like this. But then now on the market, if you are looking at this on eBay, it looks just like the CLV version. Thankfully, this one doesn't. This one's got the red banner on the top, whereas the CLV version has a blue banner on the top. But if you're looking for the James Bond films, it's a nightmare trying to find it. You have to hope that the seller, either says specifically it's a CAV version, in which case I will trust them. Nope, I won't trust them because I've seen it before. People say it's gatefold, it's CAV, and it's not. You have to really see. Hopefully, they'll have photos, and you can see that there's a gatefold and whatnot, and go from there. But anyways, so I finally picked up this. It is split across 4 sides. Unfortunately, I'm not a really big fan of the way Criterion began at supplementals. They used to tend to back end them on each specific side, and in this case they justified it by saying that these supplemental features will be referencing the filmic material on that particular side. So that's a great idea. And then later it kind of dawned on everyone that why don't we just kind of put all of the supplementals at the end, and you can remember which part of the film it was in. They even go through the trouble as to putting the screenplay that covers the material on each side at the end of the side, but then having the complete screenplay at the end of side 4. So why not just have the complete screenplay at the end of side 4? Yeah, whatever. As I mentioned before, in some films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it was interesting having the supplemental features at the end of the disc because they were different cuts of the film, so you could program your player to watch a different version of the film. Whereas this case, it is just shot and storyboard, special effects comparisons, that kind of stuff that references the material on the side. So it's kind of awkward if you have a dual side player when you hit the end. But thankfully, it does kind of trigger the step feature, so it just stops your player, but it won't automatically flip. You're going to have to hit the B button on there to flip over, or hit play and continue the supplemental section. But yeah, side 1's got some special effects comparison with the library ghosts and some deleted footage, in the stairway as they're talking about who's going to win the Nobel Prize, I believe. Side two's got some comparisons of them in the ballroom at the hotel, and then storyboards and screenplay action. Some more deleted footage with Janine and Egon on side 3, and storyboards. And side 4 has the original teaser, the theatrical trailer, excerpts of Making of Ghostbusters, some special effects featurettes, including one on Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, some improv stuff, and some insider notes and storyboards and the complete screenplay. So the film came out in 1984. If you haven't seen it, it is the tale of these parapsychologists that are working off a college grant in New York. And Peter Venkman, played by Bill Murray, is a shady character who is, using psychic tests in order to get in the pants of young girls on campus. And meanwhile, his partners are a little bit more serious about things. So you have Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd, who are actually approaching the science of parapsychology as something that is noble and actually scientific, which is much debated online even to this day. But it starts off right off the bat with a haunted library, and the special effects actually still stand up. I mean, it's really, really good stuff. It doesn't hurt that it has Richard Edlund doing the special effects. So, I mean, his stuff really looks good now. A lot of kind of lens flary stuff, and just a lot of light play. And, that's still going to look good today. And even when he has, practical effects with, ghost figures and stuff, there's a lot of play with the light and around them. So it integrates nicely with the scene instead of just like a hard edge kind of composite from a green screen or something like that. So everything melds together very nicely. I always appreciated that. But yeah, so it's these characters quickly lose their funding and realize that through this research they had done in the library scene, they've captured some ectoplasm. They've done some readings, and they've decided that maybe we can actually capture a ghost. So Egon and Ray and Peter open their own business, and it's a ghost capturing business, and they become the Ghostbusters. I always felt bad for Zeddemore, played by Ernie Hudson. Apparently early on in the script he was a contemporary of these guys. He was part of the team from the get-go, and he wasn't just this kind of Ghostbusters outsider. And then the script was rewritten, and he shows up on page 60 now, and joins the cast of characters after they're already up and running. And apparently that was because the studio wanted more Bill Murray in the film. But yeah, Sigourney Weaver arrives as their first de facto client who has a ghost in her apartment complex, and Rick Moranis appears as this accountant across the way from her. That's typical, Weasley Rick Moranis type character. And eventually, the word gets out that these guys know what they're doing, supposedly, and start destroying things, essentially, like a hotel, and but capturing ghosts. And that's kind of like their success is that, well, if you're angry at them for destroying your property, then they can just go ahead and release this ghost that they've contained. So they have this old firehouse that they buy, and they have this stash of captured ghosts in there. Meanwhile, also trying to solve the mystery of what's going on with Dana, played by Sigourney Weaver, what's going on with her apartment. That was some of the smarter writing, is that not only is there's a lot of stuff going on in the city, things are actually escalating in the story. So these guys have more work to do, and it leads up to some great montage sequences. And then you realize that this mystery that's been kind of established early on in the film is actually part and parcel of all of the other hauntings that are going on, and leading up to this culmination of some this apartment building being ground zero essentially to all the hauntings in New York City. So much fun, so many just great improv moments. These guys were kind of allowed to just run riot, and Bill Murray in particular pulls out some great quotable lines, and it's still just much fun today as it was back in 1984. This release came out in 1989, the first printing from Criterion Collection, and so yeah, CAV, and it is really, really nice. It's sharp looking. The one thing I was just talking about recently, how I don't usually collect a lot of 80s Laserdiscs. One, you get a lot of pan and scan releases, and two, Sometimes the transfers just aren't that great. But these, Criterion discs, unfortunately, may have some rot if they're pressed by 3M. But usually they're just free of DNR and a lot of the kind of processing that you would find on a lot of 90s discs. So there's a trade-off. I mean, it's an older disc, and maybe prone to rot, but then it's going to have a really nice picture and a good transfer, and it's going to be very natural, and that's what I appreciated about this. And it looks great today. I also cranked up the soundtrack a little bit, and it's got a PCM soundtrack. Of course, this is way before AC3 was released, and it does sound nice though. It's not really harsh, and it's not really bright. It's just a little thin. But you could tell that it's state of the art for 1984. There's some scenes where Dana opens up her refrigerator and sees this kind of mystical alien landscape with these hellhounds in there, and there's a bit of a roar and growl in there, and circa 1994 there would have been tons of subharmonic bass frequencies going on there, but in this it's just got enough of a punch. And the Elmer Bernstein soundtrack has a lot of presence to it. When you crank this up, the score sounds like listening to a nice CD pressing. So it doesn't sound like really harsh in the upper register. It's just it's full, but it doesn't have that really low bass extension to it. But definitely some good even surround presence. There's some ambience to it. So yeah, it's going to be a nice disc to really crank up and show off. This is a 3M pressing I have here, so it has some sticky edges. The glue on these things would tend to stick a little bit on the edges, and this one is no exception. So yeah, if you feel around the edges here, it just gets very tacky. There is no visual rotting going on, so that is nice. And I don't think I can actually get it back in the... It's actually stuck to the poly sleeve. But I did not really see much speckling on this, and there's no visible rot on the disc itself. It has a cool gatefold here. I'll show you a little bit more later, but Stay Puft being a center of attention there. A lot of cool other shots of the special effects. And again, this being an 80s release, it has the important notes about this Criterion Collection edition, and mostly tells you about what's going on with the split screen comparisons and how to listen to the different audio pieces there. No running commentary track, sadly. This was still, again, before that was a staple of Criterion Collection, but it's a really nice set. You can get a copy relatively cheap nowadays. Again, like most of the other 80s ones, it's hard to find a copy that hasn't been kicked around a lot. So I was actually happy to find one where the black is intact and it's not speckled and torn, and it hasn't been watched 1,000 times by someone's kids with sticky fingers. But very nice release, and highly recommended if you're a Ghostbuster fan, even if you have some of the copious special edition late-in versions on DVD and Blu-ray. Yeah, definitely worthy of your collection. And it is spine number 75, in case you were wondering. So look for the red banner and the gatefold, and you should be set. But thanks for hanging out for another Laserdisc Spotlight video. I'll be up next with the A through Z in my collection. We'll get those going, and hope everybody's having a great holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon.